All right, I want to demonstrate a very commonly used skill or trick that you're going to probably be asked to do. Depending on the kind of work that you end up finding yourself doing, I really do think this could be a handy thing, and that's being able to motion track a blur over somebody's face or over a license plate, which is actually what we're going to do, is we're going to cover up a license plate. This is a very common thing that I'm asked to fix. And, when I do, I don't want to have to go out to After Effects or even Motion or some other program to do this. So I'm thankful that I can do it right in Premiere. So I'm going to show you a very basic example today of how to do that. So let's look here. This is my example. I've got this car. It's shot from a car, and there's a car in front. And we want to get rid of that license plate the way you see it here. It is gone. So this is now a usable shot if you're trying to protect the person in the car in front of you. Let's make that bigger. So as you can see, there is a blur, but it's moving around. It works great shooting through a windshield because it's kind of already blurry through some of the brokenness of the windshield in this case, but it's got a track with it, and it needs to follow it all the way out of frame. You saw it kind of drift off. The camera actually loses track of the car for a second when it starts paying attention to the people walking. So let's take a look at that. So first we got to pull in some footage we're going to want to work with. Let's do this. I have it already in my project under clips. You should probably do the same. If you're working out of a project we started with previous exercises, then you may want to just go inside there and create a differentiation. But we're actually going to pull in a folder's worth of stuff, even though we're only going to need one shot for this, just because I want you to already have it in your project in case you do these other exercises. All right, so we're going to import once we're in the clips bin. You see I have a bunch of other stuff in there. Here's the stuff we did for some of our other exercises. We're going to actually bring in the things that are in this image fixing set. So what I did to get that, I right-clicked, I went import, I went out to where all the media is, the graphics and effects media, and I went to set 2. There is a folder called Image Fixing Set, and we're going to go ahead and just bring in all of these just because it's handy. Now what's nice is this will make a bin for me, assuming that I don't go in and start selecting individual items. So on a PC it's going to look a little bit more like this, and then you went to Image Fixing Set, and then inside there are icons for all the media. On a Mac you can just double back to set 2 image to select image fixing set, and the import button is the same button as if you're doing one item. If you're on a PC, it actually, you have to be pointed at a folder's worth of stuff, and then to the left of the normal sort of import button there will be a button that normally is grayed out, but it won't be, and that will be import folder. So on a PC I recommend you do that. It's just don't mine all the way into it. Because then you got to select everything you want, and you still got to make a bin for it. Whereas if you do it here and select the folder, again, it's going to make a bin for you. So there, it just did it. I already had one, so I'm going to get rid of the one I just imported unnecessarily. But let's take a look in here. So we're going to create a new sequence. So I'm going to go to my sequences bin, double click in there, and I'm going to go to the file menu, and I'm going to do new sequence, right? And we are going to use a preset. If we have one, I'm going to go ahead and use this ProRes LT 1080 one. That's fine. We're basically going custom, frame rate, size and shape we want, the pixel aspect ratio, which is 1, so square basically. No fields, we want progressive, and then we're using the QuickTime set of codecs, and inside that we have chosen the codec that is ProRes. And ProRes is fine in this particular case. I was using LT, but I'll go ahead and change it so we're all matched. And then I want to name my thing something, right? My sequence I'm making, so I'm going to call it motion track blur. All right, so now I have an empty sequence. I'm good to go. I need to go back to my project, so I'm going to go here and I'm going to go get a piece of footage. I'm going to get the video blocks shot that has the license plate in it. All right, so I just double clicked it so you could see it over here. Notice I double clicked on the icon because it works better that way than clicking on the words. Otherwise it thinks you're trying to rename it, which you don't want to do, rename media while it's in your project. It could potentially cause a lot of problems. All right, so I'm going to grab the icon, I'm going to drag it down here into my timeline, and like we've seen before, it says, wait a second, your footage is not exactly the same codec and everything as your timeline. That's okay. I set it the way I want it. Let's keep the settings the way they are, okay? Don't let it try to help you. It makes it feel like you did something wrong. If you know you built your sequence the way I told you to, you should be good. So I keep existing settings and I hit it. I'm going to hit my favorite key to get everything up so I can see it. I don't need to hear sound on this, so I'm actually going to make sure that my linked selection is off. That will allow me to click audio and video separate from one another. If it's on, then if you click, it remembers, oh, this video track has audio tied to it, or this audio track has video tied to it. So that might be something you may or may want to turn off at different times while editing. I'm going to turn it off because I like to just see my video here. I'm going to pull this separator between sound and video down a little bit, and then I'm going to enlarge my timeline so you can see the actual thumbnail. All right, it's kind of a nice starting place. So here's our shot, right? We've got chaos here, handheld from the back of a car, of a moving car, and then it goes out of frame. All right, so let's go to the very first frame just to make life a little simpler for ourselves. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a blur effect to this shot. So I'm going to go to my effects window. I still have it up over here in my project window as one of the tabs. If you don't, then just go to window and do effects. Now this is not effects controls. We've done effects controls and we're going to need those in a bit. Those are usually in the as a tab in your source window, but this clip is named so long I had to go to the little fast forward looking icon and go to effects controls. This is where we control stuff for our clip, but we don't have anything on it yet, so there's nothing to control. So we're going to search for our effect and we're going to search for blur. Now if I do blur, there's a whole bunch of blur things. That's too many. It's not really helping me. What I want is the Gaussian blur. So I'm going to do GAUS, and look at that. It narrowed it down to just a handful, which was a lot easier. So I'm going to grab the Gaussian blur and I'm going to drop it on this shot. And when I do, nothing happens. Why? Because we haven't adjusted anything yet. All right, so notice before we had no controls. Now I click on the clip and sure enough there's a Gaussian blur section. Yay team. Now, I can say, how much am I going to want that license plate to be blurred? Well, I can sort of say, well, I want to make sure it can't be read. So I'm going to go blur it to the point where I feel like it can't be read. So that worked pretty well. The only problem is it's doing it to the whole entire shot. What we want to do is we want to create a mask around the area that we want to get rid of. And any effect that you drag in here, you can easily put a mask on or use a mask to mask on or off that effect so that it only gets applied to a certain portion of the screen. So I'm going to go to the little pen tool here. It's called Free Draw Bezier. I'm going to click on that and then I'm going to go to my shot. And when I go to the shot, I can say, okay, I basically am worried about this section where the license plate is. So I'm going to draw kind of a generous square around the whole thing because I'm going to want to probably soften the edges of it. And I don't want it to go into my image too much. So I'm going to be, again, a little generous outside the perimeter of this. And I'm going to go around. And then when I want to link it back together, I just click back on the original thing. And look at that. It only blurred inside my box. Now, if for some reason it does the opposite of that and the inside of the box is the only thing that's clear and everything out here gets blurred, you can invert your mask. And it's already available here. You can see if I click it. Sometimes when you draw a mask, you go, oh, that's the exact opposite of what I want. Well, there you go. There's always an invert button that you can switch to actually switch it back and forth. Okay, so that's pretty good. I mean, I can't read it. Now I want to feather the edges of that so that it's not so harsh. So I'm going to go to the mask feather area and I can either again click on the number or I can uncollapse this and get a little slider, which is sometimes nice. And look, if I blur it too much, now I can read it again. So I've got to find the happy medium between I can't read it, but it doesn't look overly affected, meaning it's not completely obvious that I have a box of blurriness over the top of this. All right, I'm going to move this corner in just a smidge just to make it a little more balanced. Not that it matters, but I like to be a little exact in these kinds of things. Now, assuming I'm on the first frame, I don't have to worry about any frames that happen earlier because we're not showing any frames that are earlier. So what we want to do now is, since that's going to move around, if I hit play, you'll see it doesn't stay where we want it to go. It's not following along with the shot, right? It's in the wrong spot. So we have to tell that mask that we want it to follow. So I'm going to go back to the first frame where we saw where we first drew it, and I'm going to say, okay, here is a mask path. And if I actually hit the little play button, it will start analyzing the shot and try to keep the mask anchored to it. So when you do this, you have to have a good amount of contrast, which we kind of do. There's some blackness there. There's a difference in color between the white and the yellow of the license plate. So let's see how it does. All right, I'm going to hit play, and you're going to see it analyze the file, analyze the image, and attempt to try to follow with it. And once it follows, each frame is going to move and create a keyframe for you. So it's doing a whole bunch of things we could have done by hand, but it would have taken forever. So we're going to let it finish, and when it finishes, we'll see how it did. All right, so it's on the last frame, and it's almost completely out of frame here on the far right, which is probably a good thing. So let's play it. I'm going to go back to the beginning. We're going to play it and see if it reliably stays with the license plate. All right. Here, I'll do it bigger. Okay, here we go. That's pretty good. I probably have too much feathering on it because I can kind of read the numbers at times, and I don't want to create a situation where someone could read the numbers. Not bad. All right, I'm going to shrink it back, and we are going to find a moment where we think it was like not very, doing a very good job of hiding the numbers. Probably somewhere in here. I could sort of see if I make it big. You can sort of see, beginning to see those. So what we're going to do is we're just going to adjust the feather to be not quite as intense. So I'm going to back off on it a little bit. And now if you look at it big, it's pretty good. There's almost no way you're going to know what that says. All right. So what I like about that is I was just able to adjust some feature of the mask even after the motion track's already done. I don't have to analyze again or anything. I could go in and decide, you know, the whole thing is kind of obvious that I blurred it. Maybe we go in and we actually take the Gaussian blur back off a little bit. Maybe I've decided it's too much. So I could go to blurriness, which is down here. All of this is happening only applied to this effect. So if I go to the blurriness, I could say, oh, it's too much. I want to back off on it. Now, I wouldn't do that. But the point is, notice it didn't set a keyframe for me. It just it assumed that it wanted to apply that to the entire clip, which is exactly what I wanted. Now, could you keyframe it and have it go from sharp to blur to blur to sharp? Absolutely. But I just want to show you that within reason, you have some ability to tweak the effect even after the motion track has been done. You could change your mind. You could back off on some of it, which is pretty cool. And again, you'll be asked to cover faces. You'll be asked to cover license plates a lot. Sometimes branded products with, you know, that you don't have the copyright release for, you might want to blur. And then another common thing is if somebody catches the camera guy or a boom mic in the reflection in a mirror, sometimes all it takes is just a little blurring on it, and then your eye won't be drawn to it. So that is how you can do blur and motion tracking it in Premiere, and being able to stay within your edit program to fix that shot.